Your naysayers just have just another excuse to not get on board. What needs to happen and why? And it might seem appealing to make a system that has a lot of complexity to it, but you rarely get there. But that doesn't mean it's going to be any more well received from the team. What's a management system? Management system is all of the recurring meetings, information formats, reports, all of the authority matrices, all these things that are required by leaders to enable them to make decisions, keep the organization running efficiently. And it might seem appealing to make a system that has a lot of complexity to it because you think you're covering all the bases, but you rarely get there. Why is that? Complex management system takes a lot of time, not just to design, but to implement. You have to design a process. And assuming you do a decent job at that, that's going to require a fair amount of time. But then what you have to do is you have to bring people in and teach them the new process, make sure they understand what needs to happen and why. And one of the things that is an ever-present danger when you create any sort of complexity into a system is people are watching and waiting for the system not to work because their first instinct is not to embrace something new, that change. People generally think what they're doing is adequate for what needs to be done. You as a manager, though, or a leader of an organization, you may need to implement some change, but that doesn't mean it's going to be any more well-received from the team. And while you're implementing this new system, you have people that are going to be making a big deal when it doesn't work as planned. Maybe you've seen this happen, and the question that you need to ask, one of them anyway, is what could we have spent this time on other than this system that didn't work? Weeks, months, maybe even years. But then again, you do have some organizations that lack goals, and why not spend your time on developing a system like that? If you're not tracking your progress anyway, it may seem very appealing. It's non-confrontational. You get to work alone. A lot of people like to do that. But in a highly efficient and productive organization, all that time is just so valuable. You got to make sure you get your return on investment. An overly complex management system can really stifle initiative quickly, because you're going to have hard chargers out there trying to make things work. They come across opportunities, they need to capitalize on them. And if you have a management system that requires a lot of approvals, a lot of escalation, that also will require a lot of time. Now, if you can guarantee quick turnaround on decision for these guys, then it might not be an issue. But the worst thing would be if you have somebody with a great opportunity, require them to submit things for approval and keep them waiting. And regarding explaining and convincing people why this new system needs to be implemented, you have a couple of situations like that. It's going to move you backwards quick. And you may have seen something like this happen, but the more complexity you have in your system and the more requirements you have to train people on how to use it, the more likely you are that it doesn't work as planned. And when you're demonstrating in front of everybody, it doesn't work. And then all your naysayers just have just another excuse to not get on board. Reduce the chance of that happening by keeping things simple. And how much does it cost for your organization to implement a system like that? Put all the infrastructure to the side, the software, whatever it is. You talk about the time that it takes people to do all this work, and you probably got some of your more senior people doing it. Would you spend your own money on a system like that? Would you transfer money out of account of yours? That's a good way to think about anything in business, even when you don't own the business. How do you start to simplify process? Ask yourself a couple questions. The first one is, what information do I need to know? That information should be based on business requirements, organizational requirements, not nice to haves. And that's one element of creating an overly complex system is it gathers information that you either don't need or don't have enough time to use. When you finally determine what information you do need to know about, you require people to bring that to you. You absolutely need to give feedback on it. A good example are slide presentations. These can really eat up a lot of time for people to put together. And if you, as the manager, the leader of the organization, receive that, if you don't give any feedback on it, if you don't use it, really demoralizing, because that person knows that they just wasted a whole lot of their own time. If you need information, give feedback, even just a little bit, on how you used it. How do you clarify what kind of information you need from people? And clarity comes from a clear expectation of what you, as the leader, want to decide and what you want other people to decide at their level. It's probably feasible to determine how much time you have to implement this system that you're designing. If you take your meetings, your brief backs, take a look at all the reports that you would require, allocate time to reviewing all that stuff, making decisions, collaborating, you could probably pencil out what that's going to take you to get through on a weekly basis. And just remember, it's not all about working on the system. You're going to have unscheduled time in there to go see and spend time with people. So you really don't have probably 8 hours a day to devote to this system. Probably significantly less, probably 6 hours a day max. The next question that you have to ask is, do you trust your people? Because if you trust your people, then you should need less checks and balances in whatever management process that you put together. And if your answer is, I trust my people, but I still need this anyway. And if you say, well, I trust them, but I still want these checks in place, it just doesn't make sense. And if somebody's just not able to execute the way you need them to, you got to get them on some kind of plan to improve. But if you keep them around, designing a complex system to work around those people is the wrong path to get on because it affects so many other people. The only way to correct that is with leadership, not a complex management system. And the reason trust is so important is because that's the only thing that's going to keep execution down to the lowest level. And that's how your organization increases their tempo, their speed. This is where your high potential team members want to operate anyway. You may have some low performers that are fine administering a system instead of acting and delivering to the customer. You're going to have people that don't mind spending their time on administrative requirements, but no business has administrative requirements as their number one business goal. If you have a system that supports medium or low performance instead of high performance, you're just not going to have those high performers around very long. Now, what's the effect on your customers? Are they getting a better product or a better service? Are they getting better information flow with this management system? If it's complex, probably not. The key thing here is you can't be so focused on internal process that you disregard the requirements external, your customers. In fact, most of the big decisions that you make on your team should be externally focused. The requirement is established by your customer. That's the reason you exist. And let that drive the type of management system that you put together. Compare that with the level of certainty you want as a designer internally. That's different than what your customers need. When you're deciding what type of system to put together, ask yourself if you have the time, the money to implement it. Really take a look at what sort of information you need to know as a leader. Check yourself on whether or not you trust the people that you have. And are you doing everything you can to build that team that you can trust, which is different than the management system itself. And don't design a system to work around people that aren't doing their job. In closing, working on these kinds of systems really is a lot of fun for a certain type of person. Maybe you and I, but it doesn't necessarily get us any closer to delivering for our customers and moving the business toward the goals that are established. And it's easier to work on internal projects like this than confront difficult issues, which are usually personnel related. But that management system should address the direct requirements of your business, not the nice to haves. Stick to a basic executable system and get back to focus on your customers and doing what's needed to help them solve the problem that they're hired you for.